Hey y'all, what's going on? It's Professor Barth. Going audio only today, just giving a quick update on where we stand with the dollar and inflation, of course. 9.1% CPI year over year inflation in the month of June. We'll probably get the July numbers, I think, next week. It might be a little lower for the month of July simply because gas prices have improved a bit over last month, although they're still double what they were at the beginning of the Biden administration, but that may bring the CPI below 9%, or we'll see. But inflation is obviously a major problem. The Fed hiked the federal funds rate by 3/4 of a point last week. They're going to need more. There's going to be more quantitative tightening, further increases in the interest rate. But just a few stats I wanted to go over. The Bureau of Labor Statistics in the middle of last month, July, released data on real wages. These are average hourly earnings adjusted for inflation. And they found that real average hourly earnings from May to June, so just over the course of a month, decreased by 1%. In real terms, nominally they increased by 0.3%, but the CPI for that month went up 1.3%. And so that is a decrease of 1% over the month. And then if you calculate it for the year, just shy of 4% decrease in real wages. And that's hitting everybody's pocket. And it's hurting the working class, and it's hurting the middle class. President Biden campaigned on a promise to not raise taxes on people making under $400,000 or some high figure. But if you're a working American, this is, in essence, a tax. Your earnings have been de facto taxed by inflation by 4% over the last year, and this is showing up in other studies. A recent study published today, saw this in a Wall Street Journal. 61% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That's up from 52% in spring of 2021 and 55% last summer. So that's a significant increase of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. And then also, a study from Iowa State University looked at the impact of inflation on rural households. Saw this study on the Daily Wire, which had a good summation of the findings. And yet rural residents are just are getting hit particularly hard. Check this out. According to the report from Iowa State University, in 2020, rural household income stood at about $58,000. Roughly 82% of that income went toward expenses, leaving about 18%, or just over $10,000, in discretionary income. So about 18% of income for discretionary purposes or for savings. Now, fast forward to 2022, expenses have risen by 18.5% for these are rural households. 18.5% increase in expenses over just the last 2 years. While earnings, again, failed to keep up, rising only 6%. So earnings rose only 6% for rural households over the last 2 years, and expenses rose 18.5%. The net effect, discretionary income for rural households down half, 50% between June 2020 and June 2022, reducing that category, discretionary income, to just a little more than $5,000. Expenses now consume 91% of rural take-home pay, leaving only 9% for discretionary purposes or for savings. I mean, that is alarming. And then, and urban households got hit too, but not as poorly, but still, urban households hit. Discretionary income or expenses for urban households rose 14.5%, while earnings rose 8.5%. So urban households are getting hit too, but it's the rural America is getting slammed. But for urban households, discretionary income cut by 13%, rural by half. It's unbelievable. Here's the breakdown if you want to see the exact. This is from directly from the Iowa State University study. So, Powell, as I've said many times, created this mess through massive QE that, instead of being held in bank reserves, entered the money supply. So M2 up more than 40%. This is a direct result of bad monetary policy. Bad monetary policy and stupid administrative policy. Okay? You have bad monetary policy, that alone will give you inflation. But when you combine, on top of that, increased regulations and just a wrong-headed approach toward macroeconomic issues, the result is Jimmy Carter level stagflation. And so there's the CPI. Look at that, just shooting up from 2010 to 2022. Do you see this going down anytime soon? Has inflation peaked? It doesn't look like it. Though the Fed is raising rates, they're going to have to do a lot more. There's the chart of CPI year over year by month since 2021. And then I got to read just an excerpt from, this was Joe Biden's statement that he released in the middle of July after that 9.1% increase in CPI came out. And this is just golden. So he said, the president, or his handlers more accurately, while today's headline inflation reading is unacceptably high, it is also out of date. I wonder if he'll say it's out of date when, if the CPI numbers in August come out and it's like, I'm just throwing out a number, and it's 8.5% down from 9.1%. If he's going to take credit for that, that's not. But this was out of date, he said. Energy alone comprised nearly half of the monthly increase in inflation. Today's data does not reflect the full impact of nearly 30 days of decreases in gas prices. And he goes on, and then he says this, and this was just really fascinating to me. He said in the second paragraph of the statement, importantly, today's report shows that what economists call annual core inflation came down for the third month in a row. Wow, what a stat. That's optimistic news, right? Core inflation came down for the third month in a row. And is the first month since last year where the annual core inflation rate is below 6%. Wow, there's a lot to be, I don't know, all of a sudden I'm hopeful now. Maybe the president's right. Maybe this signals that inflation has peaked. Core inflation came down for the third month in a row. Core inflation, of course, is take the CPI minus food and energy, which are more volatile sectors. Subtract food and energy, you have your core CPI. Well, I took a further look at this. Here's core CPI year over year since the beginning of the Biden administration. So core CPI went down for the third month in a row. Whoa, wait a second. That's not that impressive, Mr. President. First of all, he said, and this is the first time since last year that it's been below 6%. Well, it's barely under 6%. And actually, if you take a look, so this is, if you look at it from this angle, there's not really much reason to be optimistic. And then if you look at the month over month, core CPI. Core CPI month over month, actually, core CPI went up 0.7% month over month from in this latest reading. And everything signals that core CPI it's still going up. I don't see any. Where's the optimism here? And so it's just typical spin. And then this got a lot of attention. You gotta love it. A tweet that our beloved president sent out for American families looking for a little more breathing room. These savings matter. And then he says, at current prices, the average driver, he's talking about gas prices over last month, will spend $35 less per month for one, typo there, or $70 less per month than they would have if gas prices stayed at their peak. Like, what are you talking about, man? First of all, when gas prices go up, you have nothing to do with it, apparently. But when they go down just slightly, you're going to take all the credit. If you take a look at gas prices since Biden became president, there's, even at the quote lower levels they're at now, it's still nearly double what they were at the onset of his administration. So that's an interesting meme he has there. And then, and it's just one thing after another. A month ago, he tells he's waving his, shaking his fist at gas station owners. Even Jeff Bezos had to call him out. And now this latest Inflation Reduction Act, which will do absolutely nothing to solve inflation. In fact, might even make it worse. It's just raising taxes. Not really reducing the deficit in any meaningful way. It's just it's something that the Democrats can run on and make a pitch and say, oh, Republicans voted against the Inflation Reduction Act. See, they don't care about inflation. This is all just so transparent. Then I've got to share this article. This came out last month from Politico about inner turmoil within the Biden administration. Biden's quote laser focus on inflation rankles progressives inside administration. So there are progressives within, so-called progressives within his in the White House who think Biden is being too hard on inflation, that he needs to loosen up a little bit, to just a window into the chaos and irrationality of this White House. Runaway inflation is crushing President Biden's approval ratings and threatens to swamp Democrats in the midterm elections. But many progressives, including some within the administration itself, say Biden's all-out messaging war against spiking prices is making matters even worse. Frustration among administration progressives boiled over at the end of May when Biden declared his, quote, laser focus on inflation while meeting with Powell, rolled out a plan to combat spiking prices. Biden backed the central bank's aggressive interest rate hikes. So, there are people inside the White House who want Biden to push back against Powell raising rates. A lot of people were frustrated by the rollout and by the idea that we were going to try to Paul Volcker our way out of this problem. Well, you kind of have to. There's way too much. The Fed has to tighten, but it does mean there will be a recession. So there are people within his administration who would rather risk inflation than do something to try to stop it, notwithstanding all the damage that we talked about earlier in this video for rural households, for urban households, for wage earners. The official, who like others inside the administration interviewed for a story declined to be identified by name, said the new messaging showed that, quote, people who are inherently cautious are dominating, end quote, the internal debate, meaning the economic moderates in Biden's inner circle, while every White House engages in internal policy debates, this one stands out because it reflects broader tensions that are roiling the party. Many progressives believe inflation is likely to ease on its own, yeah, right, without severe rate hikes. Oh yeah, we'll just hope that inflation goes down and not really do anything that might actually lower inflation. More moderate voices say the only path to improving Democrats' political fortunes is to bring down prices swiftly. It's an excruciating spot for the White House, the political story continues. Polls show inflation is a top concern of voters, so attacking it head-on seems the smartest political move. But progressives worry that Biden is abandoning the liberal vision of government's role in countering decades of growing income inequality, further assisting women and people of color in making progress in the labor market and transforming the nation's infrastructure into one that relies on clean energy. Yes, that's what the voters really want. Look at you see the bubble that these people live in. They really think that this is a winning electoral issue. Like, can you imagine, if you are inside the administration and you really believe that this agenda here will win the Democrats, will save the Democrats in November? I mean, you've really got to be living under a rock to believe that. Some progressives want the president to come down much harder on what they view as corporate America's role in artificially jacking up prices to fatten profits. Oh yeah, it's the fault of those greedy capitalists. That's why there's all this inflation. This is from Pramila Jayapal, the squad affiliate in the Congress. The president's agenda that he rolled out in the State of the Union is the agenda that would have eased cost and addressed a lot of the things we could do to deal with families' budget, she said. That got stalled essentially by one person in the Senate, referring to Joe Manchin. Can you imagine if Joe Manchin didn't kill Build Back Better? Jayapal says the White House should put big pieces of the Build Back Better package, should basically push that. Can you imagine if Manchin got on board with Build Back Better? Can you imagine how much worse the inflation would be right now? I mean, the Democrats should be on their knees thanking Joe Manchin for saving their butts in this election. So on the Fed, Jayapal and other progressives worry that Powell will go too far, too fast, at least in part because he feels he has a green light from the Oval Office. He should be very, very careful about increasing interest rates because we are already seeing some easing in inflation. This was in June, and then the inflation numbers a few weeks later came up at 9.1%. It would be a tragedy to see recent labor market gains thrown off into recession. Part of the tension is being played out between progressives and Treasury Department officials, including Secretary Janet Yellen. Progressives are troubled by Yellen's robust backing of Powell's rate hike campaign, as well as her support for lifting some China tariffs. So this administration has no clue, no idea what to do about the inflation except to pass meaningless Inflation Reduction Acts. The White House press secretary, who has got to be one of the worst press secretaries in recent memory, said it less than a month ago. We are stronger economically than we have been in history. Trying to make sense of what that even means, or how you could look at the current situation with two successive quarters of negative growth, inflation at 9.1%, real wages down 4%, stronger economically than we have been in history. Strange. Well, the voters don't agree. This is a poll conducted at the end of June. Views of the national economy. It's a percent of voters, prospective voters, who believe the economy is poor. Of course, 90% of Republicans, 67% of Democrats. 67% of Democrats believe the national economy is negative, and then you have statements like this from the White House or Vice President Kamala Harris, who can always be depended upon for insightful words of wisdom, had this to say in an interview with CNN. Was asked about the inflation She said, I think that there can be no higher priority than what we have been clear is our highest priority, which is bringing down the costs and prices as much as we possibly can, and we will stay focused on that. Well, that's reassuring, Madam Vice President. And then she said this in a Face the Nation interview at the end of last calendar year. We have to address the fact that we have got to deal with the fact that folks are paying for gas, paying for groceries, and need solutions to it. So let's talk about that. And then proceeded to insist that Build Back Better would solve everything. So again, the administration's clueless. Let's hope that some sanity can return, but I don't see it coming anytime soon. So that's where we stand right now, in my view. I'll talk to you all next time. Bye.